Hey guys, this is the Wiggle Man, and once again we're back after a fair bit of a delay since our last video. Certain little something called Baldur's Gate 3 might have come out and completely taken over my life for the last week or so. But Baldur's Gate aside, it is a fantastic game. Get it? Absolutely get it. Sorry, Xbox players. I managed to get this project finished. I managed to eke some a spare couple of hours out to finish it off. And I'm going to sell it. I'm going to auction it off, and I'm going to start the auction at £1. So if you want to bid on it, check out the link in the description below. Go see my eBay shop. Set up a little shop just to kind of fund the channel a little bit better, because at the moment I've got all these models that are sitting around on my shelves. I might as well do something with them because I'm running out of shelf space. I've also set up a Buy Me a Coffee link, which is also down below. So if you feel like just being generous and giving, that would be absolutely lovely as well. Of course, you don't have to. I still intend to keep making my content at the current rate that I'm going. Basically in my spare time when I feel like it and when I feel like I'm doing a good job with the model. So please don't feel pressured. It would just be nice to have. The final is a call to action to you guys. Like and subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. But also, if you guys have any cool 3D printing statues, feel free to let me know down in the comments below, because I'm at a bit of a block at the moment as to what to do next. I've got a couple of projects lined up to work on. I've also got something kind of secret in the background. Don't know if anything's going to come from it. If it does, that'll be fantastic. I'll be really, really keen on working on that, but no promises. So yeah, any suggestions? My ears are open at the moment. Anyway, enough self-shilling for me for one video. Onto the model. So as I have been gabbing on in the background, I have been essentially starting work on the armour. So we've gone with the black primer, and currently I am airbrushing some Vallejo Game Colour Somber Grey as not quite a zenithal highlight over the model, because when you're working with black, you want to kind of keep your highlights not too highlighty, otherwise you risk turning the model grey. But yeah, so that's the first layer with the somber grey. Now I'm going with a second highlight. This time I'm using Vallejo Game Colour Stone Grey? No, Cold Grey. Cold Grey is what we're going with on this step here. And again, we're just reinforcing that highlight, just adding very, very subtle sprays into areas where I think there's going to be some reflections on the armour. Again, we're going at a very low PSI. We're being very, very careful. We're just using this to kind of bring out certain areas around the armour, make them pop a little bit more, draw some attention as well. And then for the final kind of, not so much highlights, but the final addition that I've put into this black armour is that we're using Vallejo Express Lotus Black, Lotus Black. It's kind of a greeny kind of black, like Dark Reaper that you'd use with a Citadel. And I'm just essentially spraying around the lines between where the initial highlight is and where the pure black is on the armour. It just adds a little bit more interest, a little bit more colour into the armour, and I think it looks quite nice. And then with that initial work done with the airbrush, now we're going to take our cold grey that we used for our highest step of the highlight, and we're just going to do some very, very subtle highlighting within the boundaries of where we applied the cold grey. You'll notice here that I'm just putting little dots around the armour. This is just to give it a bit more texture, make it look a little bit more battle worn. You don't want it to be absolutely smooth, because if it was absolutely smooth it'd be incredibly glossy armour, and that would require more highlighting, and let's be honest, I'm lazy when it comes to painting miniatures. So again, we're edge highlighting around where the cold grey on the edges has landed, and then we're just putting little dots on kind of the flatter bits of the armour, so around the neck and around the breasts, around the kind of up and down the side of the torso, but not all over the torso. Again, it just makes the model look a little bit more interesting. The whole point I picked this model to paint was because I really, really wanted to practice painting black armour, and I think this kind of method's worked really, really well for me. So next we move on to painting the fleur de lis. We are using the cold grey that we have just used for our initial highlight to lay down the first layer onto the fleur de lis. Fleur de lis, how do you pronounce it?
Fleur de lis.
Okay, I missed out the S on it. What can I say? Okay, for continuity's sake, we're jumping into the future slightly, because I left the fleur de lis to dry off for a little bit. So now we are doing a highlight with a 50-50 mixture of the cold grey and Vallejo game colour ghost white. This time we're just going back over the model, but we're just leaving out the recesses of where we've already laid down the initial base coat to give a little bit more depth. And then finally we're going over with one more layer of Vallejo game colour ghost white, just pure ghost white, thinned down a little bit as well. One challenge I had whilst I was painting this model is bearing in mind that the torso is at a very funny angle. So the light is going to be hitting it from a odd direction. So I had to bear in mind when I was painting in the highlights as to where the light source was coming from. So next up we're going to do a bit of wet palette work, and we're going to start painting all the red cloth that are on the arms. I need to get better at using my wet palette because this whole process actually was soul draining for me. It felt very, very arduous. It felt like it took a very long time. But I started off with a mixture of Vallejo game colour gory red. Yeah, gory red, I want to say, the darker red. And mix that with a hefty amount of black and then use that as an initial base coat. I then took some just pure gory reds, watered down heavily in the wet palette, and I started to blend that in as the first highlight. So not going as far up into the arms, give it a bit of a transition between the black to the black gory red to the pure gory red, and that helps us to start building a foundation of brightness to put a highlight on. So I then took some Vallejo game colour bloody red and started highlighting even more. I think you can see a pattern of what's happening here, and we've still got one more step to go through. But yeah, this is how I highlighted the cloth on the model. Again, still not overly pleased with the vibrancy of the reds. I've found that Vallejo game colours reds seem to dry very, very transparently. I took some fiery orange and used that as another layer of highlight onto the tips of the clothy areas. So, taking what I learned from painting the cloth just now, we're now going to paint the bolt gun. So the bolt gun, the heavy bolter, is red. I want it to be a nice bright red, so I'm still going to be using the exact same colours. So I'm starting off with gory red and then moving on to a bloody red highlight, but this time I'm doing it through several thin layers through the airbrush. It's so much easier doing it through the airbrush. Oh my god, airbrushes are so convenient. And now you might notice why I'm starting the auction for this model at £1. It's that teeny tiny crack that is just above the ejection chamber for the heavy bolter. I'm guessing it's called that. I don't know much about guns. Sorry, Americans that are watching. We only got knives in the UK. There's a tiny, tiny crack, and that to me means that it's a broken model. I could have reprinted this piece. I'd already reprinted this bolter about 3 times, and I had no end of problems with this particular part of the model. Either getting it to print, having it crack, or also with the hands. The actual connector for the heavy bolter broke on the hands. Fortunately, it's pretty well hidden with the way the model's posed, but it's something that you do notice if you look for it. So I couldn't in good conscience put a price figure on this model, so hence why we're going for starting at £1. And we're going to have a brief airbrushing interlude with the heavy bolter feeding mechanism. I don't know, again, don't know much about guns, only got knives. Yeah, we're just pushing some Vallejo metal colour gunmetal through the airbrush. Again, it's really, really thin, straight out of the pot, fantastically, really smooth metallic paint to paint with. Flows really well through an airbrush. Definitely get it if you have one. And all the gold details, I then begin to push them through now. So I'm using, again, Vallejo metal colour, using their gold colour, and I'm just basing in all of the gold essentially. Best piece of advice that I can give when you are using just a paintbrush with these Vallejo metal colours is to take off as much excess as possible, because it is that thin, it is that runny that it will quite easily slip over the edges of where you're painting. You can see I made a couple of mistakes here, unfortunately. So now that the heavy bolter is all nice and dried, and the bullet feeding mechanism is all dried as well, we are going to just get our Vallejo black wash, and we're just going to go all over the model. You'll see me take the model out of frame. That's because I'm wiping it off on my shirt. I thought I had some Jiffy cloths handy. If you don't know what a Jiffy cloth, here it is. And the idea was to smother it with black wash, wipe off the excess, and just work it like that. It's a good wash to use if you want to use this kind of a technique. It also helps dry the wash a lot quicker, so you can go back to working with the model a lot sooner as well. I'd just like to caveat onto the end of there as well. I only use my Vallejo black wash for this. I've never tried this technique using citadels and uln oil, which I imagine is a lot more common black wash that is used. So yeah, maybe worth something experimenting with. On to the last piece of detail that I need to paint for the model, which was the belt. I started off slap chopping it up. Funnily enough, it kind of occurred to me how many different kind of methods of painting that I'd used across this whole statue through the whole process. There was a little bit of blue pigment that was still on my old resin brush, but it disappeared once I put down the contrast paint anyway, so it didn't really affect the model. And then for the colours that we used for the belt itself, I used Vallejo Express. I used their Wasteland Brown colour as the base colour for the belt. And I also used, I think it was their, I want to say it's like Plague Green or something like that I used for the grenades. And then I painted all the buckles in and the little nodules, the little pins. I don't know. I don't do leatherworking. You don't know me. I made them silver, bit silver. And then, of course, I painted the inquisitorial seal with a gold rim and a black, a red centre as well. So we're closing in on the end of the video once again. With the hazard stripes on the cabling, I didn't actually intend them to initially be hazard stripes, but I couldn't quite figure out what colour I was going to paint them. I didn't want to paint them blue because I thought it'd match too close to the armour. Didn't want to paint them red because we've already got quite a lot of red around the model already. So I ended up going with the base coat of Vallejo Game Colour Plague Brown. Used that as the base colour, and then I highlighted it with Vallejo Game Colour Moon Yellow. I will hold my hands up now, and I will admit that I actually did quite a lot more detail work off camera. I'd say probably another hour's worth of work on the model off camera. I was reaching that far into the model that I'd hit a point of saying to myself, I just want to get this done. I wanted to get it finished. It's really, really warm here in the UK at the moment. We're having a quite warm August currently, and I was absolutely sweating in the old shed, which turns into an oven in warm weather, unfortunately. So we're closing in on the big reveal. I'm going to be the first to admit it feels a little bit esoteric, but I had fun making it. I had fun putting it together, and I hope you enjoy. So, thank you very much for joining me on this model making 3D printing and painting journey. It has been one with this particular project. But yeah, if you are interested in bidding on it, again, the link is down in the comments below. I'll be setting up for a week-long auction. But yeah, please, if you enjoyed the content, like, comment, subscribe, do all that jazz. If you find any cool statues, let me know. I'll have a look at them, see if they spark my inspiration. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to see how this little experiment's going to go. Again, I could give it away for as low as £1, and I'll be more than happy to as well. So yeah, anyway, I've got some Baldur's Gate that needs playing. So have a lovely evening. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye for now.